Hello everybody, this is Wayward. Welcome to what is going to be a very different kind of video. This is a video about Sunless Sea, a game which I noticed is currently free on the Epic Store and which I've been playing on and off for a number of years. I thoroughly recommend it, and this is just going to be a little bit of an intro to the game for people who haven't played it before and who may be interested. So those of you who are used to my Fortnite videos will find out that Sunless Sea is a very different sort of game. It's much slower, it's much more thoughtful, there is a very great deal of reading. The gameplay, although it can be terrifying at times, is nevertheless not so full of the instant and rapid decision making necessary for Fortnite. There's no button mashing in this game, thank goodness. And it's entirely PvE, which means there's no chance of some snotty little kid stomping all over you. At least not that I've found so far. So when you first load up the game, here's the welcome page. I'm already loaded in, of course, because I've started. And I've got the Submariner DLC on the game. And I don't know whether the Epic version will come with that or not, but if it does, then it's worth getting because it just adds an extra dimension to the game. Not absolutely critical, but it does, I think, make the game a little bit more interesting. So when you first log in, here's the welcome page, and I'm going to start a new game just to get you used to the interface. Five or 6 years old, I think. Pretty well. So when you first log in, this is what you're met with. Now this is your interface, and I'll just give you a little bit of the background first to the story. If you look over in the bottom right part of the screen, as you can see, it says 3 decades ago in the reign of Victoria, London was stolen by bats. Now it lies a mile below the surface. It was dreadfully inconvenient for everyone, but it opened a vast black ocean to you. Welcome to the Untersee. Now the Untersee is obviously a fantastic creation. The game is set in, as it says, in the reign of Victoria, so it's got a vaguely kind of steampunk feel to it. And I think that gives the game an extra a particularly interesting aesthetic, if you like. You can read up about the lore online. There's plenty of stuff there, and they do try to make it quite interesting. There's an awful lot of reading in the game, but as you play on, you'll get used to which parts of the text you can skip past. So let me introduce you to the interface. So let's start at let's start in the middle, actually, because the middle is where your eyes will be mostly concentrated. This thing here in the middle is your ship, and that is you, effectively, for the entire game. Your entire focus will be on your ship. This is the starting ship. It's a ship that you start with. It's not very strong, it's not very fast, but you will have the opportunity later in the game to trade up that ship. Incidentally, the advancement in the game is done entirely through money. There are no experience points. There's no leveling up as such. You can improve your stats as you go along, but there's no automatic way of doing that. So it's really a question of grinding out the money, which is occasionally tedious, but actually is usually okay, and you can usually incorporate that into the gameplay quite comfortably. Let's look up at the top left now. So there in the top left, as you can see, are some indicators, some gauges if you like. Starting over on the far left, the important part here is not these numbers at the top, but the hull. That is your hull strength. That is effectively your hit points. 75 looks like a decent amount. That can go down very quickly if you encounter the wrong kind of monsters along the way. And yes, there are plenty of monsters to fight. Over here, this is your fuel gauge. You start off with 10 fuel. That is enough to begin with. As you go on in your ship's advance and become faster and heavier, you're going to need more fuel. Fuel can be obtained quite cheaply in a number of places and more expensively in other places. You will need enough fuel to get around. If you run out of fuel, you will have to abandon your ship and you will die. You die an awful lot in the game, by the way, so don't be too put off by that. The game doesn't automatically end just because you die. There are ways around that. So don't be too alarmed at the prospect of dying, because it doesn't necessarily mean your game is completely over. But fuel is the important thing that gets you moving around this wonderful black ocean called the Untersee. So that's the fuel. You can buy fuel here in London. That's where it's cheap. There are some slightly cheaper places to get it, and there are plenty of more expensive places to get it, but there are ways of getting fuel for free. Below it, that's your supplies. This shows you how much hunger you have. The hunger bar will increase from left to right gradually until it hits this middle point. When it hits this middle point, you will use up a supply. And the number of supplies you have is shown here on the right. The supplies go up and down. Well, they don't go up. They only go up when you buy supplies. But they go down according to how much crew you have. And we'll come back to that in a moment. Here is your terror gauge. Now, the Untersee is a terrifying place, and your sailors don't like being out in the open ocean. And so they will get terrified. And the more terror you have, the more dangerous it is for your game. If your terror reaches 100, there will be a mutiny, and you will almost certainly die from that. If your terror goes above 50, then you start to get into trouble. And we'll come back to the terror mechanic in a moment. Down here is your logbook, bottom left. That just reveals events that are going by along the way. It's quite amusing to read because it's full of little detail. There is one important thing that occurs in your logbook every so often, and I'll show you that in a moment. Up in the top right, these are your officers. You have different officers who are responsible for different things. You have a surgeon, a gunnery officer, and a cook, etc. This on the top right is you. You'll get the opportunity to change that avatar, of course, and to affect your appearance. And here's your number of crew, and you get to change that later on as well. Here down in the middle is your action buttons. We'll look at those in a moment. And then here in the bottom right is probably the most important part. This is your story journal. And this is where you will be doing most of your action. As you can see, when you start up the game, you're asked to choose what kind of past you had before you became a sea captain. You're given two options here, either to choose a past or not to choose a past. And there are pros and cons to each one, which I won't go into now. For this, I'm going to, just for example, I'm going to choose a past. Decide who you were and what you want to be. So we're now living in a room in a pub. That can change later on as well. I'll click on continue. Now, what kind of options do we have? As you can see, there's already a lot of reading here. So you can be a street urchin, you can be a poet, you can be a veteran of the campaign of 68, you can be an ordained priest, or you can be a natural philosopher. So each of these backgrounds will give you a bonus to your stats. Your stats are up here. I'll tell you what they are in a moment. But just to begin with, I'm going to choose to be a poet. And as you can see here, this will give you a bonus to pages, the skill of trickery and knowledge. It's worth choosing pages because pages is one of the hardest skills to increase in the game, and it does carry certain advantages with it. I'm just going to click on go for that. Now if you look up here you can see that two things have changed. Our pages skill has gone up from 25 to 50. That's quite good. I think your skills can go up as high as 200. So in fact the skill ratings we have down here are pretty feeble at the moment, but that will change. The other thing that's changed is we've acquired an officer. So here is the Sly Navigator, who's a first officer. And if I click on my Officers tab, oh, I can't do that at the moment. Okay, I'll come back to that. Let's read what it says. You have intuition and your friend, the Sly Navigator. He's a little vague, but he probably knows what he's doing. Perhaps you can find someone better eventually. Well, the answer is yes, you will find somebody better eventually. You were a struggling poet, now you're a Z Captain. You gained 20 echoes. Echoes are the currency in the game. You'll be gathering echoes as you go throughout the game, and you'll use them to buy improvements, a better ship, more fuel, more supplies, and you'll also need echoes for certain transactions in the game. Here's my echoes up here. It's the currency as it says. My echoes have gone up now from 50 to 70 and we'll increase them again in a moment. You've gained 25 pages, as I've mentioned before. You have the Sly Navigator. Someone is looking for passage, so that's your opportunity to take somebody on board your ship. We'll click on continue. Choose an ambition. This I think is compulsory. You have to decide what kind of victory conditions you want. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about this because your captain is going to die several times along the way, and only eventually will you be able to fulfill these ambitions. It takes a very, very long time to be able to do this. Let's see what they are. I mean, I'll just pick one random. We'll pick the fulfillment one, I think, because I've never done it. Finally, what do you want to be called? Do you want to be called Madam? Do you want to be called Sir? Do you want to be called Citizen, My Lord, My Lady, or just Captain? Well, let's just go for Captain, shall we? This is only a cosmetic detail. It doesn't affect the gameplay. As it says, this captain will probably die. Yes, this captain will. But you will be able to pass on certain things to the next captain. Now we get to choose our picture and our name. I will choose to be Wayward, and I will pick a picture at random. Yes, I'm sure many people think that's exactly what I look like. So now that we've done the initial setup, we're now presented with the Fall in London page. And as you can see, all our tabs are now open. We've got advice for captains. That is probably the best place to start. This will give you just a sort of an idea of what sort of thing you'll have to do in the game. So I'll leave you to read that when it's your time. You can go through each of these options and just find a bit about how the game works, or you can just watch this video. So once you're done with that, I strongly recommend you sell the book. Strongly, strongly recommend it. You won't be needing this as the game goes on. So we'll just go ahead and sell that, and the reason I say that is because, look, we've got 50 echoes for it. So we started off with 50 echoes, we've now got 120 for doing practically nothing. Click on continue, and now we have lots of different options here. We have a Submariner tutorial. You can probably wait on that. You don't need to read that just yet. A passenger is the next thing worth looking at. Someone in the docks wants to board your ship. It's an unsettled salvager, and she wants to go to Venderbite. It's worth taking this because you will get some money out of it. And you can see every time you click on one of these screens, it pops up with another screen with even more writing on it. It is worth reading through some of the text because it is beautifully written, and it's often a pleasure just to read the text and enjoy that. So we have to go to Venderbite. Now I happen to know where Venderbite is. So I'm just going to carry on with that, continue that. And we've got two options left now. We've got London. Here's London. I'm not going to go through these options right now, just because we don't really need to do any of them, except maybe offer passage to a tomb colonist, because they want to go to Venderbite as well, and we are already going to Venderbite. So we'll do that. So we now have a tomb colonist, and you'll get used to them. The only other thing I'm going to do at the start is to visit the Admiralty's Survey Office, because they will pay, and that's always a good sign, for information from sea captains. I'll click on that. Ask if there's anything in particular they need. Yes, they do. They need strategic information from the Iron and Misery Company funging station, not far from home waters. Now, we don't know where that is just yet, and there are a number of places where it could be, so we'll come back to that. But we now have a commission, we now have a quest that we can fulfill fairly easily, and which will get us some money, which is really important. Okay. Your lodgings, let's have a look at that. Read the morning papers. This is always, always, always worth doing. As soon as you get back to London, always read the morning papers, because the news, the recent news that it gives you, is something that you can use in encounters later on. So, because it has a promotional coupon from Mrs. Plenty's Provisioners for a half cask of salt herring, that means we've now gained one supply. Very good news. We don't need to do any of these other things, and in fact they're all locked, so we can't anyway. If we look up in the top right corner, we see we have 8 out of 10 crew. That is plenty to be starting with. Don't be worried about adding crew at this stage. The more crew you have, the more they will eat, and the more you will work through your supplies. So the whole game is about balancing fuel and supplies and terror, and you'll find out how to strike a happy medium as you go along. Let's look at our officers tab, because it did mention speaking to the officer that we have. Here's our Sly Navigator. We right click on that, we can speak to him, and here he comes. We don't have any secrets yet, so we can't increase our mirrors, but it is worth finding out what he wants. He wants to go to Frostfound. Frostfound can be found in the very north of the sea. Now we're heading north anyway, because that's where Venderbite is, so if we happen to come across Frostfound along the way, then of course I will drop him off there. The next thing I will look at is the shops, because that's where I can buy fuel. We've got 10 fuel, which is probably enough for our initial run, but I will just buy a couple more because it's cheap here in London. And there are other options as you look through these. You can buy different weapons, you can buy different engines, you can buy different lights and so on. All these things cost a lot of money. There's not much point in starting off doing this. It's better just to get out there and start earning some money. We've got 100 echoes. We'll hold on to those for the moment. If we click on our hold, we can see exactly what we're carrying. We can see that we've got a gun. We can see we've got an engine. It's not particularly good, but we'll have a chance later on to upgrade that. We know already how much fuel we've got and how many supplies we've got. We've also got this tomb colonist that we have to take. As you can see, they're nestled comfortably in their coffin. And this shows us how much cargo we've got and how much space we've got. So we have 40 slots available. We have filled up 19. Plenty of room available. Curiosities do not take up any room in your hold, which is good news. We have an Invictus token. That is irrelevant because we'll be doing manual saves as we go along, and we also have recent news. The journal, I think one of my criticisms of the game is that the journal is a little bit hard to navigate. It's not always easy to tell what quests you have to do, so you will have to do a certain amount of memorizing. But we have, here in the objective panel, we have our overall ambition. That is our final victory target, which we won't be achieving for a very, very long time. We have the commission from the Admiralty to go to the Iron and Misery Company funging station, and we have that mission to take the colonist to Venderbite. The offices we've looked at, the shops we've looked at. The shipyard is where you buy a bigger and better ship, but if I just scroll down a bit to the next ship that is worth getting, which is the Corvette, you can see we need 3,000 echoes for that. We are nowhere near that at the moment, so let's not worry about that. Let's get moving. So in order to launch, I have to press E. In order to move, I have to press WASD like normal. And to bring up the map, which I'll do now, I press M. As you can see, there's not much of a map just at the moment. The only other key that you'll be using a lot is the L key, which turns your light on and off. It doesn't show at the moment, but once I've launched, it should show up. So let's launch the ship. There it goes. It's moving pretty slowly, and as you can see, the light is lit up. I can turn that light on and off by pressing L, which I'll do in a moment because it's not showing. If I press W twice, the ship speeds up, and that is as fast as you can go. So press A to move left and D to move right. As you can see, we've now discovered a new area, Bad Stevenage Abyss. I'm going to turn north because that's where we're heading, and I'm going to switch my light off because we're passing through these patches of light, and those are relatively safe areas. Relatively. We're leaving one now, so I'm going to switch my light on. And this really is as fast as we're going to be able to go in this ship. It's pretty slow, as you can see. Now that little chime that you hear is an indication something awaits you. Something awaits you means that you get extra options when you arrive at your first port. So look out for that little chime and that little light that appears in your logbook. So we're discovering things as we go around. We're unveiling parts of the map. And the more stuff you discover, the more secrets you get. And secrets are very useful for reasons which I'll come back to. So here's Venderbite, which is the place we wanted to go. And you can see vaguely there is a circle there. That is the dock. So if I move around there, turn off my light, and press E to dock, I am now in Venderbite. So this screen pops up straight away. The trouble with tomb colonists. You brought this decaying emigrant north, now what? The new tomb colonist surveys Venderbite, shaking her head. It won't do, she says. It won't do at all. I had no idea the place would be quite so unprepossessing. Perhaps we can liven it up a little. If only I knew a helpful sea-captain. Now, she wants me to bring mushroom wine to Venderbite. Well, I can certainly do that, but they want 10 units. So I'm going to have to find 10 units of mushroom wine. I do happen to know that I can get that in London, but I don't have enough money for that. So that's going to have to be something I file away for later. There will be an awful lot of filing stuff away for later. Never mind, let's carry on. Provide what you have promised. Oh no, that's the mushroom wine. We can't do that now. Let's click on the tomb colony of Venderbite. And we have different options here, some of which are locked, some of which we can do now. If you see this little green icon, you only get that if something awaits you is active. And that will pop up every so often as you advance through the game automatically. And that will give you access to certain options that you wouldn't have otherwise. Every single time you arrive in a port, it is critical to get a port report. And in here we can do that by gathering gossip. Who's plotting what out in the tomb colonies? You now have one of this, a port report vendor bite. Port reports are really important because you get free money for them and free fuel. But you can only do that when you turn them in at London. So every time you land in a port, even if you've been there before, pick up a port report. Let's see what else we've got. Explore vendor bite. Yes, it's probably worth doing that because it's a something awaits you option, which we don't always find. So some things have happened. We now have a bandaged poissonnier. He is a potential officer. That's quite good news. And we've lost 1 terror. That's very good news. The less terror you have, the better as the game goes along. It is very difficult to keep your terror down. Let's have a look at this. Can we do any of these things? These all appear to be locked. We can't recruit him, unfortunately, because we don't have enough money. We will need to come back when we've got some money and do that. So we can't do that. Let's look at the shops tab. It's always worth doing this whenever you arrive in a port. We can buy fuel here, but it's twice the price of London. We can buy supplies, but they're 50% extra compared with the London price. It's not worth doing this except in an emergency. Do you have tomb colonists? Yes, we do. Oh. Well, I thought we did. No, we don't. I must have that must have discharged when I arrived in port. Is there anything else worth dealing with here? Recent news we can sell, but actually I'm going to hang on to that because of something I'll show you in a moment. So that is pretty much all we can do here. We don't need to go any further. So I'm going to close this and I'm going to launch the ship. Press W again so we go a bit faster. I'm going to try and steer out of the fog because fog makes combat a little bit more difficult. If I now open up my map by pressing M, as you can see we've now revealed some more areas. That's good. The whole basis of the game is that you go around uncovering new areas until you've uncovered the whole map. That actually takes quite a long time. Especially at this speed. So I strongly advise that you start off the game just by moving around and uncovering as many areas as possible, seeing if you can get their port reports and seeing if you can find the places in your initial quests. There's that chime again, and we've got a new something awaits you, so that when we next arrive at port we will have new options. As you can see, there's a lot of blank space in the game. As you move through this blank space, here we go. We've now encountered a monster. This is a bat swarm. It's north of us. I'm going to turn off my light so that they can't see me. I'm also going to back up a bit. I've got my completely useless gun here. If I fire that... oh dear, yes, they are. There we go. I can press E to indicate all clear. I can press W again to move forward again, and then I can switch my light back on. So when you pass over a defeated monster, you'll be presented with options. Either we can choose to eat them, or we can choose to reduce our terror. We have plenty of supplies, but it is free food, so I think I'm going to go with that option because my terror is not particularly high at the moment. There we go, so we've now gained 1 supplies, but we have gained 1 terror. So as I said before, a lot of the game consists of balancing terror, supplies and fuel. Let's head back south. We'll go here to Hunter's Keep, which we passed on the way up. I'm going to dock here by pressing E. Here is Hunter's Keep. A hump of dark rock swathed in mist. As you can see, there is a house on top of this lump of rock. What should we do? We can present ourselves at the house, we can walk in the gardens, we can reconnoitre the island, or we can spy on the house. These are all automatic successes apart from the last one. If you look at that, you can see your Veils quality gives you a 75% chance of success. 75 is not a bad chance, but I think in all honesty, because I know this place, there's not much point in doing anything except presenting ourselves at the house. Here we go. A maid shows you into the parlour where 3 young women wait. We have Cynthia, Phoebe and Lucy, and they have invited us to lunch. So which sister are we going to have lunch with? In all honesty, it doesn't really matter. I would personally go with Phoebe, but it doesn't matter. There's a lot of text here which we're not going to read now, but you can when your time comes. What have we achieved here? We have gained 1 memory of distant shores. That is an artifact, if you like, that will be stored in our hold, but it won't take up hold space. And there are several things like sea stories, tales of terror, these memories of distant shores, visions of the surface, little things like that, which we will pick up along the way, which we can use in transactions and quests later on. We've gained 1 supply, that's good. We've lost 8 hunger, that's also good, and we've lost 5 terror, that's excellent. And we have Storm's attention. I haven't really played enough of the game for the attention of the gods of the sea to be relevant at any stage. It's quite easy to get rid of, and I've not yet found any advantage in having the attention of the gods. So yeah, your mileage may vary, but that's a little bit irrelevant. We seem to be done here. There are no shops. So let's set off and see if we can find the Iron and Misery Funging Company. Now before we go any further, I want to say something about the map. If I press M to bring the map up, you can see here there's a little red line. You can probably just about make that out. The map is divided into what I call columns. So they start on the left here and they go all the way to the right. The ports in the first column are fixed. They are the same every single game. The ports in the second and third and so on columns are randomly distributed, so they can occur anywhere, except for the last column where again they are fairly fixed. So the Iron and Misery Funging Station could be anywhere on the map, and we just have to keep going until we find it. It does tend to spawn quite close to London, but it's anybody's guess whether it's going to be north or south of London, and that's what adds to the challenge of the game. What I tend to do when I'm playing is to flick back and forth on the map to see where I'm heading and which areas I've uncovered. Okay, this is something here. This is the snares. That is probably where we're going to find monsters, which I'm probably not yet equipped to fight because my gun is rubbish. And as you can see, we took quite a lot of damage from the Z-Bats. My hull is now only 65 out of 75. So all I have to do is keep going until I discover some land. There's a crab over on the right there. I don't want anything to do with him. He's going to be too tough for me to beat at this stage. But that's okay because I don't need to worry about that. If you want to avoid monsters, and you will pretty much always want to avoid monsters at the beginning of the game, switch off your light and head in the opposite direction. Be warned, if you switch your light off, your terror will increase rapidly. As you can see, my terror gauge has now gone red. That's bad. If I switch my light on, the terror changes to orange and it advances much more slowly. That is another ship. That's not a ship we need to worry about because it's a different colour from enemy ships. Now, according to my logbook, we're now near Demo's Gate. That's a good sign. If I can only find exactly where. There's a crab there. That's not good. I'm going to turn my light off so he can't see me. Eventually I'll get the all clear. There we go. Light back on. Somewhere around here. If I want to know exactly where it is, I can send out my Z-Bat by pressing Z. If I do that, it's a bit difficult to see, but this bat flies out from my ship, goes around and will find islands for me. Oh, it's over there. A little bit to the north. Yeah, here it is. Iron and Misery Company Funging Station. On Demo Island. Let's dock here. The Iron and Misery Company Funging Station. Iron M has a funger operation here, felling giant Boligus shrooms for building materials, harvesting Kirili for its medicinal properties. Let's see what we have here. Give the pass sign to the affable factor. The Admiralty asks you to bring back strategic information. This is your contact. Well, we certainly need to do that. Here we are. You now have 1 strategic information. That's very good. The Admiralty will pay money for that. Because we now have something awaits you, that light there, we now have other options here. We can have tea with the factor, we can explore the island, or we can accept the volunteer. Once I've done one of these options, the something awaits you will disappear. Compile a port report, we definitely need to do that. We can try gathering supplies. I don't particularly need a volunteer because I already have 8 out of 10 crew. I don't really need any more. But let's have a look at the interior of Demo Island. Oh dear. This isn't good. So, we have seen a thing. It doesn't say what it is, but there is something watching us. So we can try and attack it. We have a 15% chance of success. I don't think so. Capture it alive. A 10% chance of success. No. Or retreat to the ship. An 80% chance of success. I think I know what we're going to do at this stage. Oh dear. So we have somehow failed even with an 80% chance of success. Sometimes that happens. The RNG in this game can be a bit strange. We've gained 5 terror, not good. We've lost 1 crew, very not good. But we do have a tale of terror, and that's something that we can use later in the game to trade with. And that is all the options we have at this stage. We've lost our something awaits you. We can go back and see what other things remain. Gathering supplies, it's a matter of luck. I tend to be unlucky in this game, but let's try that anyway, because it's free if we get it. Ah, there we are, we were lucky. We gained 1 supply, but we have also gained 2 terror. So our terror is going to get out of control if we don't do something about that. So I think we won't try that again. Let's look at the shops. Again, we've got fuel that's expensive and we've got supplies that are expensive. I can get back to London without all that, so let's not worry about it. Let's set off, and I'm going, I think, now just to get back to London. Every time you're in a light or very close to the shore like this, your terror will stabilize. So it's a good idea to steer close to any kind of land. Look in the top left there, we've only got 3 fuel left. That should be enough to get me back to London. If I run out of fuel, I'm stuck. There's really nothing much I can do about that. So you do have to keep a very good eye on your fuel supply. And if you have to buy expensive fuel, then buy it. You know, if it's necessary. It's your survival you're thinking of here. Luckily, we can get free fuel in London, which I'll show you in a minute. The Murray Straits, now I know that there is an island there which always spawns in the same place. It's in the middle of the fog. I wouldn't normally steer through fog, but just for the benefit of showing you, I'm going to do that now. This is Mutton Island. The port here is called Quakers Haven. So we'll just dock here. A simple fishing village which was part of the London suburbs before London fell. I'm trying to think where that would be. I don't think there's ever been a fishing village in London, but anyway. Never mind. It's not like any of this is real. We have something awaits you, so that gives us extra options. There's lots and lots of different things we can do here. I'm not going to dwell on them now. I am going to chat to the fishermen, however, because that should get me a port report. There we are. And it only cost me 1 echo. Port reports are usually free, but occasionally you have to do something to unlock them. I think I'm going to explore the shore here. A woman in an iridescent green gown waves vaguely from a rock. Ooh. Now, I did have this once. Events on each of the islands are often randomly generated, and I do remember having this one before, but I can't remember what I did. The great thing about the game is that there is a huge amount of content in it, so it's very rare that you'll come across the same thing twice. So, is she a castaway or is she a mermaid? Should we go and rescue her? Well, let's try it. Okay. Oh dear. She is the tip of a monster's tail. So should we try and tackle it? 15% chance of success. Should we try and run away? Only 20% chance of success. This is very bad indeed. I think I will take the slightly better odds and I will run away. We succeeded. See, again, like I say, the RNG is a little bit crazy sometimes. We had a 20% chance of success, but we managed it somehow. And we've come out gaining another Tale of Terror, and we've also upped our terror to 23, which is something we just need to be careful of. There are shops here. No, there aren't shops here. Let's just set off. Get back to London while we still have the chance. There is a creature following us. If I just move around here, we should be able to avoid it, and I should get the all clear. There we go. So we're nearly back at London. London is where you will want to return to frequently in order to reduce your terror, sell any goods that you may have picked up on the way, and turn in your port reports. London is always a safe zone. There are other ports which are also fairly safe, and some ports which are very dangerous. So here we are, drifting back into London at the end of our first voyage. Press E to dock. And here we are. Collect messages from the harbour master. Okay, I'll do all that in a minute. What I'll be able to do here is visit the Admiralty and turn in my port reports, where they will give me free money and free fuel, which is why you have to collect the port reports everywhere you go. That is the best way to keep your money going up and your fuel increasing. You'll be able to trade in goods as you go around, usually for a small amount of profit. If you fulfill missions, you'll be able to get a lot more profit. And you just accumulate that over time. You go around exploring the map. There are some really wonderful places to explore. There are some utterly terrifying monsters to encounter. And there is a very great deal of wonderfully well-written text to read and enjoy. If at any time you want to pause the game, you can just, I think it's the ESC bar or the space bar, I can't remember which one it is. It's a fairly standard option. And that gives you time to at least think about what you're doing. Combat, I did show you a little bit of. It's a little bit clunky, but you'll get used to it pretty quickly, and there will be gaps where you don't meet any monsters. I would advise going stealthy for quite a while until you can buy a decent gun, and even then it's better to avoid combat if you can manage it. However, there are great rewards to be had for killing monsters. I've really only scratched the surface of the game. It gets much more complicated than this as you go around. There are certain things wrong with it. I mentioned before having to memorize some of the things that you're doing. When you return to London, you should always have some idea about where you're going to go next. And as you uncover parts of the map, there will be new areas that you want to explore, and you'll find you'll have to prioritize certain missions over others. So there's a little bit of micromanagement, a little bit of juggling tasks. You have issues such as when are you going to spend your money, how are you going to reduce your terror, how far east are you going to travel before you decide to come back, all that sort of thing. So there are lots of things to consider. But the game has great replayability and a huge amount of content and can keep you going for many, many hours, and I've really enjoyed playing it, so I commend it to everybody. Hope this has been a good introduction. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the game. Bye for now.